The AL Central. I mean, what's going on? Not a lot for the Guardians, but there's a lot going on in the Central in general. We're going to get into all of it on the show today. I'm right before I'm going on. The ridiculous Twins-Yankees trade happened. I got to talk about it. Got to talk about what's shaping up in this division. All of that and more in a
moment. You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I want to thank you for making Locked On Guardians your first listen today and every day, wherever it is that you get podcasts. This is our last week of 3 days a week. We'll be back to the full 5 starting next week. Remember to rate and review on iTunes. I always say thank you to everyone who does, so that's a chance to get a shout out on the show. And for those who don't know me, doing things in a different order today, I am Jeff Ellis. Formerly, I was the lead draft and prospect analyst at Scout and 24/7. Before that, I wrote at Indians Baseball Insider. Before that, Indians Prospect Insider. I've been on places like the Cleveland Fan, Waiting for Next Year, Did the Indians Win Last Night, and more. So let's just get into it. I was all to start to talk about the Indians remaking the backup catcher position, and instead I pop on and, okay, so I know a lot of people had some feelings about Mitch Garver for, I'm going to butcher, Isaiah Kinnear, for the shortstop for the Rangers. And, you know, they went out and traded Mitch Garver for him because they had Ryan Jeffers, and they felt good about that. And, I mean, Jeffers is a former first-round pick. I understood that. Garver is in his 30s, and he's had some health issues. He's not a great defender. I also understood why the Twins or the Rangers were willing to do that deal. They gave a lot of money to infielders, right? Seager and Simeon, they didn't have a spot for him. Isaiah is, I'm going to go against the rule calling someone by a first name because I don't want to butcher his last name, and I don't have it in front of me, the pronunciation key, because I wasn't planning to talk about this. He's a strong defender whose offensive stuff has been tracking up. Multiple years of control. I said this in our chat. Here's my hot take of the night. Hot take. I don't have a graphic. I'm not good with these things, so I'm doing hot take hands, which, whatever. I'd rather have him than Trevor Story. Yep, there's my hot take. Trevor Story, if you listen to this podcast, you know, declining production, declining defense, bad splits, going to cost a lot of money. I'd rather have the guy who's trending upwards cheap than the guy trending downwards expensive. That's what it gets down to. So, I mean, Garver is a good catcher when he's healthy and able to play. Not a great defender, but offensive production through the roof. We talked about how hard it is to get a catcher. So you understood that. Then turn around and flip him to the Yankees, along with Josh Donaldson, and completely save the $50 million owed over the next 2 years to Donaldson. Yes. All things considered, Donaldson is probably still a better player than Giovanni Urshela, but it's not a huge gap. And again, price is huge there. Gary Sanchez did not have he's not a great defender either, right? Let's just be honest there. If we were to go look at data on him, he's rough. But if he's going to the Twins, maybe he's just going to be an everyday DH for them. They want Ryan Jeffers to play, so I assume that Sanchez, I don't know how he's going to feel about that. Maybe they feel like he's someone they can flip. I don't know. But, when you get into it, like I said, you just look at the Yankees right now. You've got LeMahieu at first. Stanton is their DH. Judge in right. Left is Gallo. Center field is Hicks. Second base is Torres. Third base, Donaldson. Shortstop, Isaiah Kinnear, I'm going to butcher it. And Kyle H. at catcher. Now, he's a defensive first guy, kind of like how the Indians have gone. Like the Yankees are in a similar catcher situation, and it's not like they have a prospect who's going to fill that gap. So I'll be curious to see if they go with Kyle Higasakwa. You're going to have to help me out. Ben Roteverd is the backup there. Didn't he come from Minnesota? Now I'm like, interesting. That's the backup catcher. I'm not sure where the deal was that brought him in. But it means Luke Voit doesn't have a home, right? Like, let's pay attention to that. Luke Voit now officially has nowhere to play thanks to this trade. But if you go over to which is part of the reason we talked about on the show today, we're going to dive into this trade because it opens him up even more to be the Guardians' first baseman. We already thought it was a crazy day when the Twins got Sonny Gray. They got a good pitcher for Chase Petty, who had been like a late first rounder. I had some concerns. I think he's a reliever because he's a 2-pitch guy. And there's a high injury risk with him. He didn't pitch much, 5 innings after being drafted. Let's see, he was taken 26th overall by the Twins, so he was their first round pick. But to get Sonny Gray and a prospect, that's right, it wasn't just for Chase Petty. They also had to trade Francisco Piguero, who was, I don't even know, why did I put a pronunciation? Not like I know how to pronounce his name. Yeah, I mean, he's not necessarily a top 10 guy for the Reds, but he was close. He's at least interesting. He's someone who would have had to be added to the Rule 5 in a year, so maybe that's why they were willing. But again, they had to give up a prospect to get a prospect while trading Sonny Gray, who has 2 years of team control at a very reasonable rate. The pitcher market, I mean, the greatest player in the University of Akron history, Chris Bassett, I was shocked by that trade. I mean, Adam Oler's probably going to pitch well for Oakland this year. And JT again is a really interesting guy who a lot of people rated highly. And I mean, he was dominant before he got hurt in the SEC. But man, I know I'm going down the rabbit holes here, but Oakland has gone out and traded for Grant Holmes, Jesus Luzardo, JT Ginn. They had Dalton Jeffries in there. They keep adding these undersized arms. And like, I'm a big proponent of undersized arms. I don't necessarily love the undersized flamethrower. And in Oakland's case, they've had zero success with any of these arms, but they keep going back to the well. Definition of insanity there. But to get back to it, it's like the Twins went and got Sonny Gray. I talked about not trusting their pitching staff. Well, it's certainly a lot different when you got Gray, Bundy, Ober, Joe Ryan as your top 4. At least, that's interesting. I don't know where they're going to go from here. It's interesting, like I said. So if we assume Sanchez moves to DH, Urshela at third, Kirilloff moves to left, Kepler in right, center field Buxton, second base Arez, Polanco stays at short, and Miguel Sano at first. And this also sets them up to trade, right? Like if they can maybe find a team, I don't know who's going to trade. It's like Trevor Larnach or Alex Kirilloff. One of them becomes trade bait, in my opinion. Maybe Gary Sanchez becomes trade bait. I think that at his price is going up and the production hasn't been there offensively or defensively. Gary Sanchez is more name than anything else. I mean, last year, so let's go through it. Like last year, he was worth 1.5 WAR. The year before that, negative WAR, 2.3, 1.7. When he debuted at age 23 and 24, he was good. He has not been. Like offensively, he's been below average the last 2 years. Like he has more name than actual value at this point in time. So is it? I just have a hard time seeing Ryan Jeffers not play for them after they kind of went out of their way to open up space for him. I don't know. I'm going to be very curious to see what happens. And the bigger question is now, do the Twins have money to play with? What are they going to go do? Are they going to go for Correa? Are they going to go for Freeman? Or are they just going to sit on their hands? I am fascinated. But it is a weird trade. The Twins hyperactive right now in the early hours of the CBA in the grand scheme of things. But adding Sonny Gray, again, they acquired Sonny Gray. They traded a guy who wasn't one of their top 5 prospects. Like I like Chase Petty, but he's a high school kid who's very far away. Who I think I'd have to go look at my board. I think I had him in the 30s. So they traded the equivalent of their first round pick, who hasn't really had any developmental time, and got a really solid pitcher and a prospect. Just mind blown. Then they go into this deal and manage to drop $50 million off the books. Take in, you can never have enough catchers. Like if they want to flip Sanchez tomorrow, they'll find a home. Fangraphs liked his defensive data. I can't go over and look at Baseball Savant because it's a different set of data for catchers. He's had his issues of points behind the plate, but like his some places his defensive value is okay. They could absolutely flip him and still start Jeffers. They could flip Sanchez and flip. Well, they'd want to keep Larnach or Kirilloff if they flipped Jeffers, or if they flipped Sanchez. But they're in a position to keep going, keep trading, to find a way to continue to maybe, especially pitching is going cheaply. Like it's been for there being almost no market for no free agent pitchers left on the market. It's been 2 surprisingly cheap deals for me, and then to save $50 million. like, was Josh Donaldson really that good a year ago? Like, that's what it comes down to. Like, I'm just kind of gobsmacked. It's like, or was Giovanni Urshela not that good a year ago? Like, what is wrong? And like, where I'm like, are these guys hugely different when you consider just the general cost? I mean, Donaldson was last year, an 827 OPS. He had 26 home runs. He's age 35, or he was age 35 last year as he turned 30. He's turned 36 in December. That's like, I know they got the shortstop, but I'm just confused. Can you tell? It just doesn't, it logically does not compute for me. I see the parts and the pieces in this deal. I talked about it. Yeah, they decided not to go all in. Oh, my co-host is here. He has things to say. Nacho, what do you think? What do you think of this deal? I think that silence says it all, right? Like, he's confused by it, too. Did Urshela implode? Like, did I miss that? Like what made this deal go? I mean, Sanchez is still a better catcher than anything the Guardians have. There's value in that. So Urshela was a 96 runs created plus. He was worth 1 win and then 1.6. But he was worth, and 1.6 more in the shortened season is actually pretty good. So he had a down year. 267, 96 runs created plus. By the way, Guardians, I should say, that's pretty good. So for the Yankees, they get a upgraded third base. They get a shortstop. They take on a lot of money. They get an upgraded third base that may or may not be a real upgrade, who is significantly older. And they don't have a whole lot of options at catcher unless they're going to go full-time with their defensive one, which Matt Blake is the pitching coach. Maybe he's got more power than we think. That is a very Guardians-like approach. We're going to take break number 1. We're already at 12 minutes in. Come back and actually talk about the Guardians. Again, this deal really sets it up very well for all the things I talked about with Luke Voit. Now, it means that Ahmad Rosario to the Yankees deal I had a while ago, that is off the table. But it does also mean that there are less shortstops available, though the free agent market is still very strong. But Luke Voit is he is definitely out there. And he should not cost a lot. And you know what? Before I record the commercial break, I'll go do some research and see what the Yankees 40-man is shaping up like. It's that time of year again as college basketball's tournament is finally upon us. For all the latest odds, contests, and player prop bets, BetOnline.net is the number one source for all your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all sport wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. As promised, the Yankees have Tim Locastro is currently on their 40-man. He's from Auburn High School in Auburn. He went to Ithaca College in New York. He is a New York guy. He is also the one of 500 plate appearances, a 231 batting average, 333 on base, 329 slugging. Yeah, that's pretty ugly. So there's some spots. So maybe the Yankee system, it's not necessarily a bad system anymore. It's doing better. Let me put it that way. There's a few players I really like in their system. I'm trying to think of the lefty from St. Mary's, who's apparently not even in their top 10, because I would remember the name if I could see it. And the top guys are known. But they could probably use some more depth in that minors. Maybe maybe they could use Bradley Zimmer. Just saying, their current outfielder is Tim Locastro. In terms of who is on their roster, they could maybe use someone who, if Aaron Hicks isn't healthy, can handle center. I'm not saying you trade Bradley Zimmer for Luke Voit, but that might get you 40-50% of the way there. Should we go look at the trade value site? I don't think it's going to put us that close, but let's go check. I'll pause. So here's the thing. The trade value site is even worse than normal in terms of it has Mercado being worth more than Zimmer, and I can tell you from talking to people in circles that is absolutely not the case. I think the change in those values is because Zimmer will now cost more than league minimum, just due to service time. Voit is at a 3.1. The other interesting thing, just as it's going down, that Aaron Bracho has a higher value than at a 1.2 than a lot of players on this list. for the Guardians. So it's a very, like, his is higher than Joey Cantillo, and that's just not the case at all. So in terms of overall, I still think Zimmer gets you a good chunk of the way there, and then maybe it's a throw-in type. Maybe it's, Henches, right? Clear 2 spots. The Yankees take 2. Well, it only clears 1 spot, but still, it clears you 1 spot. And then, the Yankees get an interesting lefty. And just an idea. Back of your head. Keep that there. I'm going to keep working on the Luke Voit trade ideas because it makes too much sense, specifically right now. With the Indians just not having much there and him not being a costly piece to get, who, like, yes, it was the the COVID shortened season, but, sorry, I got distracted by something popping up. It was the COVID shortened season, but I mean, he led the American League in home runs. That's he's a solid hitter. He's an above average hitter, and he's definitely better than what Cleveland currently has. Now, let's get into what the Guardians actually did. So, before the lockout, I was sitting there talking about Enel de los Santos, right? The reliever, and Sandy Leon. Those were the 2 big additions. The Indians' minor league catching, to put it nicely, is crap. There is very little there. Naylor, there is more questions than ever if he's going to stay at that position. A lot of people are advocating that he moves back to third base. Maybe as a way to help resuscitate some of his prospect value that catcher maybe was overwhelming last year. There's La Vestida, there is Naylor, and, honestly, Andres Melendez, who passed away. I mean, there's many reasons why that's a awful story, the least of which is that he was the Indians' number 3 catching prospect, honestly. And this is an organization that invests in catchers. Lucas Simeon got a lot of money as a high school kid. Alex Lavestida got 7 figures out of St. Ignatius, right? I was trying to think who else. You've got the Josh Rolets and the Michael Tinsleys and the Gavin Collinses. I mean, they draft a catcher every year. Logan Ice, and they got nothing to really show for it. It's, they let a few guys go. They're still trying to figure out just depth in the system at the position. It's kind of a disaster. I was talking about, like, Justin Lotta, our good friend over at Indians Baseball Insider, tweeted out that when they made their trade today, finalized their formally announced trade. We'll get into that in segment 3 for Drew Fry. Not Drew Fry. I keep wanting to say Drew Fry. It's not Drew Fry. It's David Fry. Yeah, David Fry. I don't know why I want to say Drew Fry. But for David Fry, that he's the number 3 catching prospect in the system. And it's like, my response was, like, Justin's right, but I don't think he means that as a compliment. That's just where the system is. Not to say that Fry is not an interesting player. He'll get a full segment for a reason. He is interesting. But there just isn't much there. And then when people are talking about, well, I'm blanking on, like, the guy, like, I think it was, like, Robert Lopez, who's, I think, not even stateside yet. And that's the thing. You know me. I'm not spending my time on guys until they at least get to Arizona, or I can have seen them. There's just such a high flame out rate that I need to get some levels of filtering. And I respect those who go super deep, who go even deeper than I. I know of the players. It's not like I don't know. It's like it's more like I know a last name. I know some basic info, but the flame out rate is just so high. I don't view the investment in time as worth the overall payout. So catching is ugly. But we do have our first major league addition. Luke Maile was signed for a league minimum. Now, I'll be curious to see what the corresponding roster move is when this officially gets announced. It has not officially gotten announced. I didn't get the email. I got the email about David Fry. I did not get the email about Luke Maile. He is going to be their backup catcher. So Sandy Leon got that non-roster invitee. He's going to spend his time in Columbus. He'll be there in emergencies if needed, but he is not making this roster because now they have 2 players on major league contracts. Luke Maile is a Kentucky kid, went to Kentucky high school, went to University of Kentucky, and you look at his history: Tampa, Toronto, Milwaukee. Definitely a type likes him. The biggest look he ever got was in 2018 when he was in 68 games and had 231 plate appearances for the Blue Jays, and he had a 700 OPS that year. Last year, he had an 816 OPS. Now, it was in 34 plate appearances. He's had 691 over his career. He's a strong defender. Offensively, he's got a career OPS of 568, and that's lower than Hedges. He is not as good as Hedges is, but he has, over his career, been even worse offensively. We know this is what this team does. This is what this team is focused on, is defensive-first catchers. And they got another one here. And then they got Leon for his veteran leadership and emergency. And he'll be in AAA. And you'll have David Fry in AAA, likely. And the question is, I'll be curious to see how they handle the actual catching duties, right? Because is Lavastida just starting AA and play every day there? Does Naylor maybe play some third? How are they going to juggle all these players? They're going to have to figure something out. Maylie, is he's a solid backup type. He's, I'm blanking on the guy we had a few years ago who was on the 40-man and they released him. He was with the team. Well, he ended up in the Reds. This is the problem. That's your third catcher. There are those guys who are just solid third catchers. That's Maylie. I don't even know if you feel... let's be honest. For his career, when he was with Toronto, he was the primary backup, appearing in 42, 46, 68, and 44 games. Didn't play 2020. Now, that could have been a lot of reasons. You never know, because 2020 being the COVID year. And then last year with Milwaukee, it was 15 games. He was out there and available. He's essentially a third catcher, and he is going to be the Guardians' second catcher. And we'll have to see how they open the 40-man spot for him. Do they, I talked about, they could start playing 60-man roster shenanigans. That could happen. You can move guys to the 60-day DL now that camp is open. But the only player that really fits is Carlos Vargas, and when they start his clock, I don't know. It seemed very unlikely. There were points they could have done last year. So then who gets the cut? Do they let a Mercado go? Do they let, Logan Allen is just sitting there. The Logan Allen, the elder, makes the most sense to probably of anyone on that roster to let go at this point in time. That's the thing. When you're looking at Allen, Henches, Mercado, and Zimmer, there are some players that if you have to say goodbye, you say goodbye, and I don't think it affects you too much. But my co-host has opinions. He's coming in hot. But yeah, this is not the upgrade. It is not an upgrade. And this is not what any of us wanted to see a catcher, which has essentially been, there's pitchers that hit better than the catching position has hit for the Guardians the past few years. Remember when, we had Carlos Santana and he, willingly moved off to, try third base and outfield. And remember all the effort he put in? Because we had Yan Gomes, who also looked really good at catcher. And then Roberto Perez came up and looked solid. And, man, we had a nice little window. And now it's back to, this is how the league typically is, with catching just being this absolute black hole. And the Guardians not developing the position particularly well, if we're being honest. Again, they invest in it every year and have nothing to show for it. This is a position that is totally from outside trades that they have filled or free agents. And, yeah, it's not an ideal situation. And if you thought we were done talking about catchers, you are absolutely wrong. We're going to take our last commercial break, come back, and talk about newest official Indians edition, David Fry. Before we talk about Fry, let's talk about Built Bar. And I wouldn't be surprised someday to see a Fry-flavored Built Bar. Let's put it that way. Let's tie it into the deal. Let's tie it into what we were talking about on the show. Right now, Shamrock is the newest deal. That is a white chocolate Shamrock shake with crumble on top. I was a big fan of the churro puff when I tried it. Banana cream pie puff. I ate a whole box of those. Not at once. I spread it out. You could, because it's so good for you. This is a product that's an A in my health food app. Like the banana cream pie one, it's marshmallow inside. You're thinking, how can it be good for you? 140 calories, 17 grams of protein, only 7 sugars. That's something that's healthy for you. There's so many things. There's always, every week, they got something new going on, something fun. Like I said, the Shamrock dropped. I didn't even know. If I hadn't just put in an order, I would be doing that. I've been eating my eggnog, Crave, and the white chocolate, basically the Oreo. When you go to BuiltBar.com, remember to use the promo code LOCK15. It's what I use on all of my orders. You also build up your Built Bucks to save even more. Remember, that is BuiltBar.com. Your promo code is LOCKED15. Okay, so David Fry is an interesting player. He's one of those, I have to laugh. If you listen to last Friday's show, by the way, quick note, I had it wrong. The way it was phrased was weird in the article I was reading. So the Guardians could have a top 6 pick 2 years in a row. The third year, they cannot pick in the top 10. That's how the new system works. I read some more today. So it's not just you can't pick in the top 6. It's after 2 years, you're not even in the top 10 anymore. So keep that in mind. But for a team like the Dodgers, it'd be 1 year in, 1 year out. So I had it wrong. I thought it was that. But a person who would not have got those opportunities and chances maybe is David Fry, because he was a senior sign way back in 2018 out of Northwestern State University of Louisiana. Northwestern State, Louisiana. It just seems weird to have Northwest in Louisiana. From Nachitos, LA. He was a senior sign. He's from Cooleyville, Texas, which that's a place that is always producing high school talent. Like that is a known program. That's a strong high school. By the way, Northwestern State, for all of my teasing, Brian Lawrence, the solid Padres pitchers for years, graduated from there. Nick Heath, who's played in the big leagues, was another player from there. And recent high pick of the Twins, Mason Melitakis, was also from there. So they've had some guys. Logan Hoffman was also a pretty recent one. So as much as and Adam Oler, there we go. We just talked about him in the trade. The Mets like this university, by the way. They drafted Nate Jones from there in 2019. Brandon Rishi in 2007. I don't have time to be doing this, but we're going to do it. Levi David in 2021. I mean, the Mets 2010, Chad Shepard. It's all Mets all the time here. Adam Oler was not drafted by the Mets. He ended up there, but he was part of the Chris Bassett deal. So, yeah, tying it all in. Infinity sign, snake eating its own tail, all that fun stuff. But, enough about that. So, yeah, as much as I was like, it's an interestingly named school, it's a productive one. Good on them. He was an extremely productive player out there. It hit 340 and 327, 430, 444 OPS, 591 slugging, 604 slugging. He played this past year catcher, first, third, second, and I believe outfield spots. I mean, he played all over the diamond. And let's see. I could just look at I have it in front of me here. So this, across 2021, we have first, third, catcher, left, and right, and DH. So first and second. So first, second, third, everywhere but shortstop. Did not play, so no shortstop, no center field. Played everywhere else. This might have been a gimmick game. It looks like in 2019 he played everywhere on the diamond once. So I think that was a gimmick game. I think it's the one time he's played shortstop and center field. But it doesn't change the fact that that's what he can do. He's a super utility type. And the reason this trade gets completed now is there was probably some minor concern that he could be taken in the Rule 5 draft. Because he is the return for trading JC Mejia. Mejia passed through waivers, and a waiver trade was worked out instead of him just going on to be claimed. Mejia showed some things at points at last year, so I get that. And the Brewers are very good at development, maybe even better than the Guardians. If you want to make that case, I'm here for that. There's Tampa, there's Cleveland, there's Milwaukee. That's the top for me. But so they wanted Mejia. Fry was who the Guardians wanted. And for a team that needs catching depth, I mean, he's performed well. Last year, split across a double and triple A, mostly double A, Biloxi. 255, 348, 449. Had 12 home runs, 19 doubles, 3 triples. And again, he plays, he mostly plays catcher, first, and third. And that's why those are his primary list places on Baseball Reference. But you're getting a potential super utility type who can also handle the catcher position, who's hit decently well in the minors. I mean, his minor league OPS is 820, 269, 351, 469. This is the type of guy you want to gamble on. He has hit double-digit home runs every level, every step of the way. How about back in 2019 when he was in Wisconsin and he had, that's the A affiliate, and 568 at-bats, 41 doubles, 17 home runs. It's a lot of extra base hits. He had 50 walks that year. So there's a lot of things to like. I get why they wanted him. He's an interesting sleeper. Now you don't have to worry that he gets plucked in the Rule 5, so you can just have him come in and see what he can do for a year, and then you're going to have to sit back and make a decision unless, he forces their hand before that. We discussed how bad the catching situation is, right? Maybe he can force his way in. You know, we'll see. He's also 26 years of age. He has always been old for the level he has played at. Often, that Milwaukee year, he is almost 2 years older than the average age. So there is that you have to add in. That's why you're maybe not as high on him as the statistical production would point out. I'd be curious to see if Zips likes him or not. But you're getting a player who, there's a small chance he could turn into a starter because the catching position is what it is. There is a slightly bigger chance he could be a utility type who can handle catcher but also give you flexibility in what he can do. Now, the one thing is, you can move guys around. There's always the concern. You want to always almost have that catcher there just in case you need him. But he gives you could end up, isn't that the Guardians' dream? That Fry comes up and he's a third catcher and also can play all those other positions. That's, I think, in the back of their mind what they really like here. But it's a solid acquisition for a player they were taking off the 40-man. They got an interesting bat who has some potential with the big leagues, and we'll have to see what he can do. I have been Jeff Fellis. This has been Locked On Guardians podcast. Remember to rate and review, download daily. It helps. Subscribe over on the YouTube so you can see my guest host as he pops in from time to time with his strong takes on the show. And as always, I want to thank all of you who are doing your parts, helping out and interacting. Hit me up on the Twitter at JeffMLBDraft. When I get enough questions, we do a mailbag, so there is that as well. Again, thank you all for listening to the Locked On Guardians team. And as we end our episodes now, go Guardians, go.